program this morning. All of our friends on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. We're very happy to see you. Rosanna, Anita, the four regulars are back for the first time in a long time. I was going to call her something else, but I might have gotten in a little trouble. Anyway, we're broadcasting this morning from Minneapolis, Minnesota. This weekend, we're going to have a party school of our membership and friends. And we're going to be talking about the party program and its main propositions. And tonight there's going to be an introduction, and I'm going to do that. And Scott, you're holding forth on our strategic policy, how we move from the People's Front to the anti-monopoly strategy to anti-monopoly government and then working class power. I'm looking forward to your usual working class stamp and decisive defeat of the extreme right. Anita is presenting on Sunday on the fight for unity against racism, sexism, and homophobia. But between Anita and Scott, we're going to have a panel with some outstanding young trade unionists. Well, they ain't all young, on the working class and the party, how the party program deals with that. So if you want us to come to town, send Rosanna and I a note, and we'll be happy to bring this show to your state or city. But let's deal with the news today. Big win on the red clay, on the red soil of Georgia. Mr. Warnock won, I think, by 3 points. He enlarged his. That brother has been running for office, 6 times? Was it 4? 2 different primaries.
I think 5.
Was it 5? Because he ran in the general, and then there were 2 primaries, and that happened twice. So congratulations to the election machine and the movement in Georgia, which, Rosanna, it defeated the slavocracy. That's what they were fighting against, the slavocracy. And there ain't no 2 ways about that, and sent them packing. What do you think?
Well, I think it proves our point in terms of the fact that it's the people who make the decisions. It's the people who can, united, can win some of these difficult struggles that are coming up before us. It's the unity of the people. I mean, it was almost, the turnout was almost as much as the regular election. And that was due to a large mobilization by several organized groups and the big effort by Georgia organizations there that have been fighting and have been organizing for the past 10 years. So, it shows that unity and the working class, we really have the power to come out and really make change.
It was Black, it was Latino, Anita, it was white, it was people of different faiths, Jewish, Muslim, Buddhists, some non-believers, women, men, people of different genders who came together to say no to the sons and daughters of Jefferson Davis. I mean, and said that Stone Mountain is not going to be infested by the Ku Klux Klan and the white citizen councils and the neo-Nazis. We're going to make it slopes of racism and sexism free zone. I mean, but I'm just so thrilled that that the forces of racism were pushed back.
They were pushed back, but they're still lurking out there. Georgia has. I was going to add to what you said. The suburbs too really came through for Warnock, and even the rural areas. Just to see the swath of areas of Georgia that went bluer this election than they did in the general or even in the past. So it really changes the perspective on Georgia for the future. It's no longer a red state. It's definitely a state in play for both mainstream parties. But I think defeating Herschel Walker was a big deal. It was really good. I think Warnock ran a perfect campaign. He really, at the end, I think that was very effective, showing regular voters things that Herschel Walker said, and it was clear that he was making no sense and really was not fit for the Senate. And I think it's also a defeat of Trump, who, this is the 12th of his 14 endorsed candidates that lost. So it's really brands him a loser in many ways.
Trump is a loser. They say he hates to be
Well,
called a loser, but loser he is. He got lucky once, and because of a whole number of different factors, including sexism and then the director of the FBI at the time. What was that guy's name who held that press conference at the
James
last minute
Comey,
about
Comey,
James
Comey.
Comey? Yeah, he held that,
James Comey.
and there were several things, and then the Clinton campaign had some weaknesses too. But anyway, the point is that his candidate lost, Herschel Walker, and is going back. And Scott, I'm so glad because I really didn't like. I was very uncomfortable with the whole discussion around Mr. Walker. It was very distasteful to me, and I mean, and as one of our comrades, D said, it wasn't really about Walker. He was just a front for a retrograde, reactionary, backward-looking, uh, really an antebellum, pre-Civil War movement on the part of, and but he's gone, and I was so struck that Mr. Walker in his, Mr. Warnock in his intro, he said, now we're going to get to the business of dealing with workers' rights. And we're going to deal with the business of dealing with women's rights. Those were the first two things he said in his acceptance speech. And I thought that was very encouraging. What do you think?
Oh, I agree 100%. Um, this idea that it really wasn't about Herschel Walker is an important one. The the assessment that this was the leftover of the planter class, the old slavocracy that was defeated is absolutely correct. Now, I've just been reading W.E.B. Du Bois's Black Reconstruction in America, and there's a wonderful chapter about the moment after the Civil War when, on a mass basis, people in the United States realize that the preservation of the republic, the preservation of the basic democratic structures of the country requires equal rights for everyone and requires the enrollment of Black people as voters, freed former slaves as voters. And I think it's I think we're at a similar moment where people are realizing on a mass basis that if we're going to advance, preserve democracy, let alone advance it, we absolutely need to insist on equality, on the importance of voting rights for all, on the importance of union rights and democracy in the workplace. If so, the republic is either going to fall to fascism or it's going to advance in an anti-monopoly and eventually socialist direction.
Well, in that respect, Anita was right. I mean, the forces of reaction and white supremacy and Klan terror were set back in Georgia and around the country, but they haven't really gone very far. They're well funded, they're well organized, and they're well armed. well-funded, well-organized, well-armed, and that's a very dangerous proposition, um, including some of the missteps that have been taken recently by the leadership of the Democratic Party, particularly with respect to that railroad strike, which we'll be talking about in just a second. But not only, there's also foreign policy issues. So we got a big job to do, and that is to build a movement, a many-sided, working class led people's movement that will lay the basis for some more fundamental changes. But first, it looks like not only did Trump lose in Georgia, he got his butt whooped, Rosanna, in New York. I
It was
mean,
about time.
it's about time. It's about time.
And in Chicago, where the Chicago Tribune has asked that, or has taken the position that his name should be removed from the building, the Trump building in Chicago.
Thank you. Every time I go up First Avenue, right across from the UN, there's a Trump building. I'm like, why don't they? You go up the West Side, another Trump. They need to take the name down, bury it someplace, deep. But they were accused of tax evasion, and I guess all the businesses do it. They gave their corporate heads of different departments and their accountants, free apartments, free cars, free this, paid their children's tuition and all of that, and they got caught. But the real issue, Anita, is when is the criminal referral? When is the dude going to be put on trial? I mean,
well, I wish I knew the answer to that, Joe. What?
Now they got that special prosecutor.
They have a special prosecutor, which might help. Jack Smith is consolidating a lot of the cases, and well, I don't think. I hope he will be brought up on this charge, and the Attorney General in New York is continuing. Now, I think she's looking into the old Stormy Daniels payoff case. But anyone who lived in New York in the 80s, as I did, knew that Donald Trump was a fraud. I mean, tax fraud, I think it's even more than tax evasion. It's really tax fraud. It's the entire organization was involved. And there are documents that were presented in court on this go round that showed that Donald Trump signed off on it. There was a memo saying, please reduce so-and-so's salary by $72,000. Well, that's not a usual practice that everyone gets their salaries reduced, but it was in compensation for having given them these perks for nothing, no tax liability. So it's it is serious charges. I think it will make a difference on how he goes forward doing business, but it's just the first step. I think there's going to be more reckoning to come.
You know what worries me is that all of this is taking place in the legal arena, in the realm of the struggles between different sections of the ruling elements. And it can't be left to that. It can't be left to that, because if it's left to that, deals are going to be made. And, and you had better believe that the corporate forces are, doing what they need to do in order to make sure that their voices are heard. But we keep saying it, a people's movement from below to demand, Rosanna, that Trump be convicted. and thrown up under the jail, without going after the corporations that are funding this movement, without the labor movement raising hell. And it's very dangerous because a lot of maneuvering can and will take place, particularly now that the Republicans control the House.
Exactly. I think, it really calls for our deeper understanding of unity. We have the numbers. We definitely have the numbers, but we have to organize ourselves and unite with all organizations that are fighting this, and to bring really that solid change that we all want. So it's a matter of uniting on the things that we agree on and moving forward, because we can do it.
We can do it, and we have to do it, and because the stakes are really, really, really high.
Absolutely.
As Scott said, it's either we're going to be in for not even echoes, but the reality of dictatorship, or we're going to have to move into a new, more advanced democratic small d uh, political framework and dispensation. And at the heart of it will be the stance that the working class and trade unions take. And I hate to say it, but the fact of the matter is that the recent decision by the Biden administration to forbid the railroad workers to go on strike, along with the Democratic Party leadership, was just plain wrong, Anita.
It was a
It
strike
just,
breaking bill.
huh?
It was a strike breaking bill. The
It was
government
a
has no
strike
business
breaking bill,
interfering in
Anita,
a
and
union's right to strike.
and you got to condemn it, you know.
Absolutely.
And it's going to make the fight against fascism more acute. I mean, more dangerous. It's going to make the
Mhm.
threat more real because a lot of workers are going to say, there they go again.
Mm.
First, you did it on NAFTA. Then you tried to
Right.
do it on the Trans-Pacific Partnership. And now you're acting like a regular, ruling class JoJo when you break our strike.
That's
I
right.
And you
mean,
can't
Yeah.
demand that labor show up for elections, organize for elections, get out the vote, defend the vote for elections, when you are unwilling to allow them the right to struggle for democracy and their own rights in their workplace. That's um, that's nonsensical. And we know that without organized labor, without the trade union movement, um, the the electoral victories that have been won over the past couple rounds would not be possible.
now
Exactly.
we had a membership meeting on this issue last night, Anita, and uh, I think that some of these issues were addressed. How did you find it? I wasn't able to participate, but I heard it was a good showing, and some important things were put on the table.
I just caught the last bit of it because I had a conflicting meeting last night myself. But I would like to hear from Rosanna, I think was at the meeting, and maybe I'd like to hear what whether conclusions were reached about how Congress should conduct itself. What should the pro-labor legislators, what steps can they take to ameliorate the situation? I looked online to see who voted in what ways on these bills, and couldn't find that data this morning, but I'm sure it's out there somewhere. But Rosanna was at the meeting. I think she'll be able to tell us. I wasn't able to be there either.
So the big issue is the 7
All on
days.
you, Rosanna.
Yeah, I think it was. We had a very good discussion. A preliminary draft was presented. Comrades gave their input and their thinking. A lot of very good questions. Preparation for possible upcoming strikes. by UPS, and I forget the other large unions that will in this coming year. The importance of getting ready to provide support, build that movement, because one of the things is that the uh, the forces to defend the right to work, the rights of the railroad workers, wasn't as isn't as strong as it should be to have pressured the administration to not interfere. So it was a first step in drafting a sound and sober statement by our party. And that's how we work. We work collectively. We hear different perspectives, and then we put something together based on that, not just on one or two people's opinion.
Well, that's very important, and the big thing is going to be our trade unionists and our friends on the left and our contribution to helping stimulate that kind of movement uh, uh, from the ground up in the workplaces, in the central labor councils, and the state bodies, to because it's by the way, there's going to be a big strike next week here in Minneapolis. Nurses, 15,000 going out on strike. Scott, one of the big issues in this was sick days. The railroad workers wanted 15 days. That was their opening negotiating position. And of course, they didn't get it. And there was no pressure from the left. And the railroad corporations knew that. So they just ignored it. I was talking to an old steelworker friend of mine yesterday morning. And he said, Joe, the bosses would rather give up pay than give up sick days. They would rather give up pay than give up sick days. Why? Because for every sick day off, that means that they're going to have to replace it by paying a whole day's wages to somebody else. They're going to have to do new hiring, which is a kind of a classic example of what the essence of the class struggle is, right? The fight over the division of the workday. That's the basis of the class struggle. And that was at the heart. Who gets what? The corporations are trying to maximize their profits. They're trying to squeeze every inch out of the value that workers produce. And the workers are trying to get that back by collectively organizing and trying to raise their wages, trying to get time off, dealing with health and safety, vacation, trying to resist, speed up, and so on and so forth. That's kind of the essence of the class struggle. And this was a classic example of how it played out. And he said, our union, we only have 3 days. Steelworkers only have 3 days. So now the proposals that were put on the table by Bernie and by Sherrod Brown in Ohio for 7 days, that's still, Scott, an issue to be fought for, isn't it?
Well, the issue to be fought for is the right of workers to decide on and take action on their demands. So it might be sick days. It might be the overall problem of understaffing, which I think probably almost every working class person in this country has faced in some way or another, right? Staffing levels have been stripped to the bone. Everything is done with the minimum of people, always, kind of down to the wire. And what's needed is, we've got this system that allows the maximum amount of flexibility for corporations and for employers, but no flexibility at all for workers. So it might not even be paid sick days. Sometimes it's just the railroad workers were also fighting for the right to not be penalized when they call in sick, right? That's so yeah. The paid sick days are important, but the fundamental thing is the right of the workers to decide what they need and to fight for it.
Absolutely. But the sick days is an issue. They asked for 15. You can't get around that. And another thing that they asked for was control over their schedules. You can't get around that either. And therefore, I mean, what are we going to do? Take an all or nothing position? You know, either get everything or is there, in the course of demanding the no continence of any forbidding of the right to a strike, but now what do we do? That's the question. And what do we ask our membership and those around us to do in order to support those workers and their demands? Because the AFL-CIO just issued a statement saying we want the 7 days. That's what the National Trade Union Movement put forward yesterday. So that's something that we
If
have to
that's the
take into
demand, then
consideration
certainly
as well.
If that's the demand, then progressive and pro-labor legislators should put forth a clean bill with 7 days of paid sick leave for all workers. And there were Republicans in the Senate who voted for the amendment for the 7 days paid sick leave. Put them on the spot. See if But the Biden administration made the demand that workers be forced back onto the job. Let Congress make the demand that paid sick leave be universalized at the level of 7 days, and see where that goes.
Excellent point.
But not attached to a bill that breaks a strike.
Exactly. Let's deal with the Let's deal with the mailbag questions. We got 3 this morning, and came in over the course of the last week. One of our writers said, they asked us, "Hey, Communist Party, why don't y'all declare a general strike? What's the matter with you, Rosanna? How come you and Joe Sims don't declare a general strike?
Well,
Too
I
busy
mean, just
playing
as
the
we,
Democratic Party, huh?"
I mean, just as we weren't able to support the railroad workers, if you don't have the support, how can you get the support to do a general strike? People have to really fully understand the benefit of not going to work, being able to be willing to not go to work, give up their paycheck, give up whatever it is, make the sacrifice. And that's what's key. And we don't have that. We don't function out of our own whim. We function out of what the working class is ready to do and what the working class is willing to do and is at whatever level. It's an analysis of the situation, not just because we think it's the right thing to do, but if it's the conditions aren't right, then we can't do it. We just can't do it. It's not just up to us. It's about the whole.
Thank you. Conditions aren't there, not even close. And that demand also got to come out of the trade union movement. I mean that's
We're a party, not a trade union.
You want to strike? Go to the workers. They'd have to have a consciousness of the issue. And when that happens, watch out. What's the difference, Anita, between the Socialist Party USA and the DSA?
You're asking the wrong person, Joe. I think this person needs to write to the DSA and ask that question, because we as the Communist Party USA are distinct from both those organizations. And I'm not an expert on the distinctions between these different organizations. Of course, they have different histories, and you could go into that and show that there's different perspectives on each one. But I think that would require an expertise beyond me, frankly. So I
All I
pass.
got to say is that we're willing to work with them and anybody else on the basis of the issues on which we agree, like on the right to strike, on affirmative action,
Mhm.
that's before the Supreme Court now, on
Sure.
stopping the war danger in Ukraine, and so on and so forth. What is the party's current stance on the criminal justice system, and what can be done to combat it?
The the criminal justice system in the United States is deeply imbued with white supremacy, with classism, with patriarchy. It's something that has to be combated. It is not in any way, um, in almost any case, a servant of the people. Um, so, starting with the police, we work for community control of the police. The demand that the people who carry weapons and enforce the law in communities be placed under the supervision and accountable to the communities that they protect. That's just a basic democratic demand. That's the beginning of a bigger fight that's going to lead down the road to the abolition of the carceral state as we know it, due to massive changes in how um, uh, criminality is treated, and in fact, what is defined as criminal. But the criminal justice system, um, we may have a very narrow area of overlap insofar as we're demanding that this system, which is not designed to help the people, be turned to our interests, fighting Donald Trump, holding the insurrectionists of January 6th accountable, bringing charges against right wing extremists. And even there, we see that the slow pace of progress on that is a versus the just whirlwind of mass incarceration, is evidence of how unsuited this system is to the people's needs.
The criminal justice system is criminal and unjust, and it needs to be completely overhauled. I mean, completely, from top to bottom. You're right, Scott. Beginning with community control, but also you got to deal with the judges, the whole legal system, and everything that underpins it. And by the way, we cannot end this edition of Good Morning Revolution without welcoming home Brittney Griner. Welcome home, Brittney.
Mhm.
We're glad you're back. It's a big victory. She should never have been in jail in the first place. And so we're very happy that issue has been resolved, and that this basketball player can come back home to her wife and family and resume a normal life. That was a victory, and we're glad, very glad that it took place. Well, until next week, comrades and friends, brothers and sisters, siblings, stay strong, stay safe, stay in the fight. And on Sunday, we're going to have a memorial meeting for Betty Smith, who was a longtime leader of our party, longtime chief executive officer, publisher of international publishers, who held down, kept publishing Marx, kept publishing Engels, kept publishing Gus and Winnie and Angela and many others for a couple decades. Made a big contribution, and so we're going to honor her life on Sunday. You can go to our Facebook page and find the link, and we hope you'll join us in uh, paying tribute to this working class shero. Take care. Have a good weekend. We'll see everybody next week. And thanks to our producer. Take care, everybody.